Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the Immergence Show. We do this show every Tuesday, talking about latest and greatest in emerging tech and immersive experiences. And today we have a special guest. Paula is an amazing educator. She has been teaching AI, Web3, blockchain, and all sorts of aspects in retail space. She has worked with various companies in Asia, Europe, and US, and is very knowledgeable in the sustainability side of things. I would love her to introduce herself. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Hi, Nico. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. So my name is Paula Kilgarriff. I'm from Ireland. I'm a lecturer in Web3 and Emerging Tech, and I work in Digital Twin, which is an on-demand digital clothing company that is powered by AI and verified by the blockchain. So my daily activities are lecturing different types of emerging technology subjects to the retail and fashion industry students. And then I also do a lot of consultancy with fashion brands moving into Web3.
Awesome. So tell us more about your education work. What made you pick these topics? And how difficult it is to be the innovator in this space, educating the next generation.
Well, I think I've been in academia for the last 20 years. So I suppose it really goes back to my own educational experience. So I was raised by patriarchs and in a Catholic system. And when we were young, we weren't in the culture of like being innovative or talking out of turn or asking questions about, how systems and civilization had evolved. So we were kind of kept in small boxes, stay inside, and then when we went to college, then we were asked to think outside the box. And I was like, well, what if there was no box in the first place? We were just socially and culturally conditioned to think a certain way. So I started to ask questions about, how society was formed, what kind of technologies was there. I started to learn a lot about, new cultures, and started traveling a lot as a young person. So when I went to college, I did languages and business. Then I went on to do computer science, and then eventually on to fashion management and luxury. So I think I was kind of destined to end up somewhere between fashion, technology, and sustainability. And I'm doing this now 20 years. So I've been around for Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3, and sustainability now is kind of the big topic. So I focus on what kind of technologies are driving sustainability in fashion retail. And I also spent 8 years in China working in fashion and fashion tech. So my students always say I came back from the future, or I'm coming back from the future with all this knowledge on different types of technologies and the fusion of these technologies.
Wow, that's really valuable. Thank you for that. So we're going to dive into this a bit more, but before that, I want our audience to know they can comment and share their thoughts. Even though we're streaming on all platforms, we can see your comments. So the first topic I was going to talk about is, in terms of like your teaching and using these technologies. And, we briefly talked about it before the show. How there is now ChatGPT, how there is this, different tools that is available. What do you see about, this younger generation using these, whether for education or creativity?
Well, I think I'm teaching non-design students, so fashion marketing and retail mostly, and their understanding of the technology, they're coming from like social media, e-commerce, TikTok, social commerce, that kind of thing. So it's natural for them to have a good understanding about what's the next phase of the internet. So moving into Web3, moving to 3D AI generated applications in a post smartphone world is the vibe that I'm sending through my classes. So for me, I'm cross-discipline. So I focus on management, technology, and marketing. So my students would have a very good understanding of all three. So really depending on the subject matter, for example, if I'm teaching management, I might use, sustainable tech as a driver, as a unique selling point. So I'd ask my students to think about, well, what kind of technology can we use that drives sustainable businesses, for example. Or if I'm teaching information technology, I will be teaching ChatGPT and how to make your own agents. Right. Or maybe Python and image classification for first years as well, which is quite good. So my students, I think what binds them whether they're from computing or technology or sustainability or management or marketing, is the fact that they all want to build a more sustainable world. So they're very aware of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is actually policy now coming through academia, where our students have to have a very high awareness of that. So they know that there's going to be cross-discipline between, the different faculties and, what kind of products and services they're building and which kind of technologies they're building. And if they're building in a centralized, way or a decentralized way, if it's built on a gaming platform. And a lot of my students are coming from gaming platforms like Roblox, Spatial, Decentraland, Sandbox. So they would have a general understanding of the different types of technologies that are coming through.
Awesome. So they're users of these technologies, and now they're understanding what else you can do beyond that. That's awesome. So you touched on the sustainable development side. I want to give an overview to our audience. So they may not be aware and familiar of this. So sustainable development goals came from UN, correct? They were different goals from like no poverty, zero hunger, good health. The ones that are more specific to maybe the fashion and technology side is like the industry, innovation, infrastructure, responsible consumption and production. So do you want to give us more into this, Paula? Like where are the areas that from the tech companies to fashion businesses, they should be paying attention more and incorporate within their business?
Absolutely. So I suppose in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and the ones that we're hitting, we also hit the Sustainable Goal number 4, which is quality education. So again, we know in blockchain technologies and generative AI and AI that we can provide, education to minorities or smaller communities that may have access to traditional education systems, along with finance, which we talked about before in blockchains. And then in terms of the other sustainable goals, maybe number 13 for, reducing waste and production. Another sustainable goal then will be creating innovative communities and smart cities. So we know that if you look at fashion, my industry in particular, we have our supply chain. So what we look at, we use metaverse as the interface, we use blockchain as the infrastructure, and then we use AI as the tool. So we believe that if we apply these technologies to how we develop our corporations, how we develop new products and services, if we're hitting these goals, we will actually reduce, our carbon footprint or impact on the planet. Now we know the planet is now heating at 1.5 degrees hotter than it should be, and by the end of the century we want to stop it from heating to 3 degrees more, because we'll have a seismic shift in our ecosystem. So there is a very big drive coming through corporations to actually look at their existing supply chain and think about which technology they can use to create more sustainable offerings. From blockchain perspective, we know that blockchain gives us authenticity, provenance, and ownership, right? Which is fantastic if you're on a supply chain, you're able to see what your suppliers are actually, if their goods are made fairly, if they've been, if they were paid properly, that the employees, and if the products were made in a sustainable way, for example. Then we have metaverses, which are fantastic to create these online virtual platforms. Instead of, going shopping, for example, you can shop on the metaverse. So it saves carbon footprint. And then AI, as a generative co-design tool, helps with customers and brands working together to build products in real time that the customer wants. So we believe that if the customer is part of the design process, that they're more likely to accept and take accountability for the products and services that are made. And then, of course, blockchain, Nico, you're familiar with consensus mechanisms around new products and services. We know that the blockchain and tokenization works also great at funding new projects, particularly regeneration projects for textile companies and so on. So we know that there are multiple use cases that can be used to that either A, solve a problem, or B, add value to a company.
So well said. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Companies have been trying to incorporate some aspects of these. Like we saw the, Aura blockchain adopted by the luxury brands. And then there's this new concept of digital product passport. What are your thoughts? Do you think the companies are doing enough, or there's more to be done? And what do you think about these adoptions of blockchain for doing that?
Yeah, well, I think the technology is there, but I mean that's creating future products. Yeah. So what I'm interested in, what are we going to do with the products that we have now, and all the kind of all the leftover textiles and materials and so on. I know when we just talk about tokenization, there was one case study. It was for oceans, and basically you could buy a token. I think it was the Chile desert. There's a big island there of clothing. And I was saying, well, maybe we could use tokenization where you could buy a piece of clothing and then have it recycled or repurposed or regenerated. So my point is, I'm concerned about how we're going to reuse the existing waste that we have. So even at Digital Twin, as you know, we create digital clothing on demand. Louise was talking about repurposed clothing or end products, where we could use, generative AI to create the designs and then print on repurposed fabric. So there's an example. So the technology's there, and that's great, and we know what the future looks like. But what I'm trying to understand is, okay, well, that's great, it's there, but can we use any existing resources or existing materials that we already have? And rather than starting with, smart design, which is basically design thinking and circularity together, which is coming along. But what are we doing now? What can we do with the resources that we have now? And that's what we're trying to understand at the moment.
Yeah, this recycling, upcycling have been a concern. I was just saying that there was a startup that just got funded for doing at least 1% of products in terms of recycling, because the recycling is really costly, even though the technology is there. Even companies like H&M try to do something, but it's very minimal, mostly for marketing. So there's a lot of work to be done on the recycling. The other part is like just reducing consumption. It's, I think, as important, if not more important, to kind of reuse what we have or pass it on and exchange with others and use digital products, right? And
totally agreed. I mean, you have virtual fashion, for example. It doesn't have to be made into a physical item. It can just be purely virtual. And I think also as well, like how we use things. Like, for example, I can definitely see in the future kitchen appliances would be leased to your consumer, and when it's finished, then it's given back to the manufacturer and another one comes along. So we won't own our products. They'll be in a constant circular regenerative cycle. That makes sense for certain products like electronics, for example. So I think that also, looking at how we consume, when we consume, it is a big deal. But I think for myself, I fell out of love with fashion when I was in China, and that's when I did my terrible Tedx talk. I don't really remember it that much, back in 2015, where I talk about educating an entire supply chain to encourage sustainability. And the reason why I did that is because I was going around as a fashion buyer and I had carbon fungus in my sinuses that I had to have removed. And then I knew that day, when I had to leave China for my health, it was like, okay, this is very, very serious. It's affecting my health. So that's when I started to learn about sustainability and blockchain and all that kind of thing. So it is a real threat. People are dying from, diseases that are caused by pollution or not recycling products correctly. So it is a health issue. What I wonder is how we're going to pay for it. So I was talking to my students this morning really about should there be a recycling tax, or how do we fund or get people into the culture of not consuming things in a linear fashion? How do we get them into the circularity, or considering what the product comes back in its second life, if that makes sense? And how we could use technology like AI to sort certain types of materials and test the probability of this item coming back in the second life as a shoe or a handbag or whatever. So again, AI, I think, is going to help a lot with that and detecting and sorting different types of fabrics.
Even forecasting how much production really needs to happen, because a lot of times there's surplus inventory. Like, why is it being produced? Because they're not necessarily talking. So, speaking in terms of like the co-creation that you mentioned, if they're not really hearing what the users want, they're just making things that they think people want, and then back with extra supplies. So yeah, these are all like interconnected. And I like this concept of digital product passport because it is to get more circular. And it's not just for the fashion or textile industry. It's for electronics and other aspects. It is for our audience that may not know. It is one of the initiatives from EU that is kind of pushing the industries to do better in different areas. And the benefits of that is one side on the consumers to have better decision making option by looking at the information about the product. There's also benefit for the product manufacturing. Like if you know more information about the product, where the different parts of it are coming from, you can optimize their product and design for circularity.
Yes, and even in terms of like localization, for example, if you're making products for a different culture, it's able to stop the production and change the prototype to match the localization of that country. So yeah, I mean, digital product passports are any type of digital access to a product before it's made, is going to be really, really helpful. And I definitely think people hopefully will buy clothing, in through consensus mechanisms at the beginning of the product life cycle, shall we say, before we actually make it. But that's going to take it's quite a big challenge, I think, for all fashion brands. How do you feel about collectivism in terms of, so I'm carrying out research with local designers in Ireland, and I was explaining them about interconnected collectivism, getting into like a group where they're actually forecasting different types of textiles and we buy in bulk. And then they were like, that sounds like competition to me. So they were afraid of it first. Well, am I not giving my IP or giving my designs away? And I'm like, no, we're bulk buying on behalf of Ireland for all the 60 fashion designers who can then, dip into the textiles that were bought in a collective manner, so we can forecast. Or maybe
they can maybe do it anonymously.
That's what I was saying. So that's research I'm carrying out now at the moment, and also using style 3D or generative AI to create products. Non-fashion designers like my students using these generative AI 3D modeling tools to create collections and so on. But the fashion designers were like, well, your students are retail students. What would they know about design? I'm like, oh, yes, I know. But we are trying to understand. That's why I think design, marketing, and retail is going to become very blended. Everybody needs to know how the product is made, where it came from, if there's demand for it or not.
Because it helps them to do their job better.
Exactly. And that's the culture that I've set. So fashion design is friends with fashion marketing, who's friends with retail, and we're all working together to create better products in real time.
Yes, exactly. It's just, I love that idea of like, mass buying products and reducing all the, transportation costs and, all the environmental factors that we're causing by that. So that's very valuable. And again, blockchain can be handy to not necessarily reveal who is behind each purchase. And yeah, these are all very innovative. I love what you're working on. We have a comment from Philip that says DAOs could serve as a collective bargaining exchange. Yeah. Have you thought about doing a DAO, Paula?
I have, but I was speaking to someone recently who was saying it's quite challenging. So I'm going to do some research on that. But yeah, DAO could be something that we would look at, like a
well, it's about how much of it, how much of it you adopt. Like you don't have to necessarily have every aspect of a typical DAO, but in terms of like decision making being distributed and stuff like that, that might be just more comforting.
Yeah, I think I suppose it's a type of collective, really. It's definitely a technology we could use. And I think as well, I'm really enjoying as well immersive retail and all the different brand activations at the moment in Roblox and Fortnite. And there's a lot going on in immersive retail as well. So it would be so nice, if the consumer who are stakeholders in Web3 have access to the supply chain and to the digital assets. And I still collect 3D wearable NFTs. I don't stake them, yet, but crypto is going through a bit of a strange move. I was just talking to my partner who works in crypto, and he was saying that Binance has been fined, and CG has left, and then we have all the big crisis with Sam and OpenAI. So yeah, it's a very turbulent times.
Oh my goodness. Yes. With new technologies comes lack of regulations. And we had a session of our show just talking about regulation because I felt it's so important. Regulations shouldn't stop us from innovation, but also there has to be some level of it. So people can do business, more comfortably and establishes some sort of trust. So talking about immersive experiences and virtual stores, I noticed that you're a big fan of these. Can you tell us about one of your favorite experiences? I mean, there are so many of them. What do you like? What do you think can be improved in this space?
I suppose, well, the first kind of immersive experience we were part of was a Decentraland Fashion Week, where Fidget Twin, we did like a Bored Ape digital tracksuit for one of the avatars. So that was quite fun. And then in terms of my students, we normally just rock up on Spatial. So we go into like different activations like Tommy Hilfiger to get the free wearables. We spent a lot of time on DressX as well, getting the free NFTs. And then I suppose there's a couple of, I don't really teach Roblox because it's not really that's not really my area, but I know a lot of my nephews now are big into Roblox and the activations on it. I like the whole idea of gamified retail. I like the idea of the creator economy, owning my own assets, buying, selling, trading, investing in designers that I like. And I think, it's good for the brands to use those kind of immersive experiences because, they need to collect data, hopefully zero-party data using crypto wallets. I hope that that's how it'll play out. But I know, there is a certain amount of centralization as well. But I am a big fan, I have to admit, and I can't wait for Apple Vision Pro's 3D apps to be able to shop, using my avatar on a 3D Zara catalog. I haven't taught my students, we do 2D app development, but I have proposed for 3D app development in the next courses. So yeah, and I often say to my students, like, oh my God, because when I was teaching technology 20 years ago, I remember I started teaching search engines, Google, and my colleagues were like, oh, that's a plagiarism tool. I was like, Google is a search engine. So, sometimes when I'm throwing ChatGPT around, to people who are not from the same generation as me, also, oh, we don't like that. So technological adoption is always very fun, shall we say. But no, my favorite is immersive retail. I think it's really fun, and I think it's a good way for brands to, participate in stakeholdership and co-creation, and build long-term relationships with consumers. So yes, my students will be very pro 3D apps, metaverses, and also post iPhone. And I've said to them, I said, I can't imagine doing this, and buying a 2D catalog, top from Zara. We don't do this anymore. It's voice activation. It's post iPhone. It's sitting in your bedroom at night going through, 3D wearables for Zara. So I've definitely moved on to AI generated apps and post smartphone. So virtual retail and AR retail and all that kind of thing is coming down the curriculum.
Very cool. We talked about Humane, and that's another post smartphone option, but it was purely voice and no visuals. I don't think you would be a fan of that, not having any visuals. But yeah, that's interesting. Philip has a question. How important do you think it is the realism to user avatars, especially in light of Unreal Engine 5? Do you think it's worthwhile to attempt in crossing the uncanny valley, or might the risk still be too high for freelance devs and artists?
Okay, well, I suppose for a retail perspective, I mean, I'm doing a research paper now at the moment, direct to or what is it called? Direct avatar to e-commerce. So I think MetaReal avatars are an absolute must, because we have like fitting and try on and how the fabric moves and all that. So from a retail perspective in e-commerce, direct to avatar or direct to commerce or direct to avatar, whatever it's called, this business model, it has to have super realistic avatars. But I don't know about avatars outside that for games or so on. But I can tell you, coming from the industry, the customers will want real avatars, so they'll be able to try on their clothes, upload an existing wardrobe, download catalogs from different types, and you'll basically plug in your realistic avatar to the e-commerce platform. As regards to Unreal Engine, I'm not sure. I don't build on it. That's the computer science faculty. But from a consumer point of view and providing, digital products and services in an e-commerce or social e-commerce or 3D social e-commerce, yeah, definitely realistic avatars with exact measurements would be important for the future of e-commerce.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. We see that Roblox, even though the characters are pretty basic, it's getting a lot of attention from the brands. Just because it has the traffic, it has the eyeballs of the younger generation. I was at the Metaverse Summit and they were saying like the only place you can find Gen Alpha is really just Roblox. You can't really find them on any other app. So from the brand awareness perspective, they're kind of planting the seed with this generation by showing up in these spaces. And then brands were saying we're okay if the, necessarily the visuals are not up to the par that we are expecting. So that's interesting. But I agree with you, like eventually when there are more options and there's more competition to Roblox, then they have to, level up their aesthetics and solve for this. And virtual try-on has been a consideration for so long.
Yeah, I mean, Roblox is a totally different animal. It's a totally different segment. They're all gamers. I mean, even my nephew who's 16, I teach social media as well sometimes when I'm in the mood. It's quite an old technology now. Oops. Mark and Co. And I said to my nephew, I said, I want you to watch Social Dilemma. I gave my students, he's only 16, gave my students an assignment on it. And he's like, Auntie Paula, I don't use social media because it's toxic. And I was like, well, where are you? And he goes, I'm on Roblox and Fortnite. And he goes, we don't use social media, we use games. I was like, okay. So already, my 16-year-old nephew is telling me that social media is dead and it's old school and it's toxic and he doesn't use it and he doesn't even have an account. He said, I'd rather hang out with my friends and buy stuff on, metaverse platforms or games. So there's, he's not my student yet, but I think the gaming thing will become more of a thing as they progress into university. But my own students are still, they're still addicted to social media and their smartphones.
Well, has he complained, your nephew, about like anything in Roblox or Fortnite that could be done better, or does he feel safe and pretty okay with it?
I think he said he feels pretty safe and he sticks to his same friends. So there are strangers, on there trying to talk to him, whatever, but it's just him and his 5 best friends hanging out, so playing games, and they love it. But no, he's absolutely no interest in social media. He thinks it's old-fashioned. So I was like, okay. Yeah, but
even then interesting. That's
But then I stopped teaching in Instagram, Facebook. What's the other one? TikTok, if I feel like it. Most of the time, I'm gone on ahead into something else. But social media, as we know, is quite toxic and it's changing, and it needs to have more community-focused, healthier engagements with technology and so on. I had one student who said he's on his phone 16 hours a day.
Wow.
Yeah, they pick him up in class by mistake out of pure habit, and I'm like, put the phone down, it's going to be okay. And they were like, we know you've moved on from apps, 2D, and you're in your post-iPhone world, but we're not. We're still here addicted to this clunky, ugly bacteria device. But you click. And I'm like, okay. So I've already moved on. I can't wait to buy the AI pen or the AR glasses. I've broken up with my iPhone. I dropped my iPhone 6 in water, and then I got a second-hand iPhone 10. My screen time now is like an hour a day because I've no love for my iPhone anymore. I want to be free and engage with technology in a different way, whether it's through a lovely big desktop or VR or AI pin. That's where I'm at myself.
That's amazing. Yeah, and most of his immersive experiences are better through desktop. But it's still like we see over 90% of like social network users are using their phone. Some people don't even have a computer. So that from the accessibility perspective, that
Yeah.
is kind of missing.
Mhm.
So we do need to design for those folks. And the problem is like those headsets are not necessarily designed for long hours consumption either. So
Mm.
like, what are we gonna do? Like,
Yeah.
then we have to kind of put them down and be out of those experiences. But yeah, let's talk about kind of what your experience in different part of the world. You briefly talked about China and how you realized sustainability from that experience.
Mm.
So in terms of adoption of these technologies and kind of like using these technologies from whether you're a retailer or a tech company, what have you seen the differences between different parts of the world?
Well, I suppose for fashion, it means different things. So fashion in Ireland is retail, fashion in France is culture, art, lifestyle, fashion in China is a supply chain or data. So, as I move from different places, they all have a different kind of understanding about what fashion is. China, for example, is a data driven. I mean, as soon as you see a retail, they're retail companies. Nike is a data company. Most retail companies are data companies now because we live in the
Right.
data driven economy. So I think it's really about data, to be fair. Is it really about culture and lifestyle and art? No, it's about data and how we use it to build new products and services, particularly in China, because China, was the pioneers of APP technology. They're very, very comfortable. They've got a unique political and economic advantage in terms of how they collect their data. And, their smartphone adoption was like very, very high. One of the early kind of adopters of smartphones. So it's definitely a different vibe. I mean, when I was there from 2012, I mean, I met the lady who has the metaverse handle. I started using AR in 2012. They were using e-chat payments and QR codes, and they started blockchain in 2014. In terms of supply chain, so China was incredibly advanced in and very comfortable in how they use technology. Then then it really depends. Then you go to Japan. I was there like in June, very conservative. I was really surprised, that the NFT kind of digital assets market wasn't super hot because they've got like anime and Hello Kitty and all those
Right.
things, and they're really struggling to catch up. And then of course China has its own everything. Just basically reinvents the same software that we have, but in a walled garden. So totally different as well. A lot of people think as well, China is China, it's not Asia. Anything outside China is Asia. So totally different animal. And then I find I haven't really that much experience in the US as much. I don't think there is how will I say, I think Europe is very regulated and very, very advanced in technology and the regulation side. I think the US is lacking behind a bit. And in fashion, I think so as well. I think our Europeans and the Asians, Asia first, then Europeans, then the US, I think, in terms of using technology and getting comfortable with digital assets and currencies and all that kind of thing. But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And, in the US, we always see it's kind of stopping the innovation than actually helping it. So that's interesting. And in terms of like the challenges that you see, do you see different challenges to like make products for Asian market versus the European market versus the US market? How do you think like these are different?
I know, like with fast fashion, a lot of the products coming from China, like Shein, are giants now. I mean, I think they're like 7 times larger than Zara and H&M combined. Temu is another one. Concerned about their sustainability practices, and Shein would probably get IPO status. I hope not. It's a terrible thing to say, but I think they're very unsustainable. So China is producing a lot of fast fashion, and we're continuing to consume it here, which is quite concerning. So I would hope, I don't know how that's going to work out, to be fair. I don't know if they're going to be fined with sustainability practices, or maybe they'll start creating more sustainable products, but it's kind of hard to know where it's going. But yeah, Shein and Temu, I think you're familiar with that other website. I think it's called Temu.
Yes, Temu just quickly kind of like a virus spread it across the US.
Yeah.
They had all the money to do the huge marketing and ads all over our social media.
Hmm.
And they're very much like the Wish app. So
Yeah.
low price items, shipping, again, as a bulk, and they don't pay tariffs, and very
Yeah.
unsustainable.
Yeah. And also copyright infringement, like they're very comfortable with data and computer vision and looking, through the Instagram photos and taking pictures of designs and producing them like 2 weeks later. So it is, yeah, it's definitely a problem. But I don't buy on Shein or Temu or any of those. I don't enjoy the experience. My students would buy a lot, I feel still. They're very price conscious. But that's what I'm hoping with blockchain, AI, and metaverse, that we know that generative AI is going to add to the operating profits of an apparel company. I just hope that they use that operating profit and absorb it in the supply chain to create more healthier, more sustainable products. So if the supply chain can absorb the cost of more sustainable clothes even better, then we may have a chance of taking down fast fashion, or at least offering the consumer alternatives to fast fashion, more alternatives.
Yeah, and I think the biggest problem with fast fashion is also, separate from the values and sustainability, is the quality. You're never going to get good quality with those products. So you're wearing it once or twice and it's done. So that's the really sad part. But yes, again, younger generation, as much as they care about the environment and they're upset about the consequences of our generation behaviors, they still can't afford really high-end stuff. But what's interesting is that, in countries in like Asia, they're also very much into luxury. How was your experience about luxury in Asia? Is it, I've heard like partially it's because of looking at it as an investment, or do you think it's more of a lifestyle thing? Like, what are the reasons you see that they're into luxury?
Well, it's both. Well, for me, I was a private fashion buyer for the top 1%. So I wasn't in fast fashion as such. It was more like I was a buyer for rich ladies who like to buy haute couture dresses, for example. So I remember having a conversation with my clients, the dress is 250 grand, but it doesn't matter because Chanel's going to buy it back anyway. And I'm just going to use it as investment. So yeah, so then I bought the dresses along with a couple of fridges to house the dress at a certain temperature and brought them back to China. And she goes, well, when I'm old, I'll have my own exhibition. So, but she was trying to convince her father that it was an investment because it was an archive type dress or whatever. And also we got a call from Karl Lagerfeld's assistant to say that Johnny Depp's daughter wanted a loan of one of the dresses, but the dress prototype fitting was my client. So I signed off to say that they could use it. So my clients definitely, they love Birkin handbags as well. They see them as investment pieces. And as for clothing, then it's sold back to the Patrimony Center in Chanel or Dior or wherever it is. So yeah, my clients saw them as status and kind of investments. But now the ones I have now, they're more like they want to know about where it was made, how it was made. We say Xianzi Minzi, which means new face. So the more they know about the product, it gives them status. So when they do rack up with the Birkin, they can explain how much water was used on it, where it was bought, no animals were harmed, blah, blah, blah. So it's more of informed luxury and sustainability. So the Chinese are interested, they will pay extra for it, but they want to be able to communicate that they know how the product was made because it gives them status. So it's a different type of luxury consumer.
That's interesting. Wow. So that makes me think that luxury is more circular and more sustainable than the fast fashion, in that sense that it will be rebought several times or preserved and repaired and all that.
Exactly. And I suppose it's kind of like, in the early days of, decentralized finance. I mean, I have been known to say, I bought a rake of wearable NFTs and I hope to use them as collateral to get a second mortgage. I can definitely see that eventually. Well, I hope so, that the Bank of Ireland would consider my digital assets as collateral if they're super famous. A couple of Bored Apes in there. Not me personally, but my partner has. Maybe we could stake them, or I know my partner has one Bored Ape and he rents it out for 150,000 a month to some game. The Chinese thing about my Chinese experiences, they were very early. I knew about the value of luxury goods before anybody else did, I feel, because I saw how they bought and sold them between each other. And also, I'd often hear them with being Hermes and they'd be talking about a certain scarf and saying, oh, we should have been involved in the co-creation process because they got the baby dragon wrong, and that's American red, not Chinese red, so we're not going to buy it. And then they thought everything was counterfeit. So I was exhausted then trying to explain, well, it's not a counterfeit. And they were like, so this idea of NFTs, generative AI, cultural appropriation, co-creation, buying assets and selling them, this is all coming from the China mentality. Also, co-creation is coming from Chinese mentality, because if you look at like Tencent and Alibaba, they look like competitors, but they're not. They're in the background having babies and sharing supply chains. So it's cultural. So I learned in the 8 years there, I really learned a lot about how they buy, how they feel, what they do with the asset, and everything's an asset really. So the luxury consumers mostly.
Cool. And have you seen them adopting like these immersive experiences and AI and other aspects as quickly as well, or was it already?
So I haven't been back since 2019, but I suppose the KOLs, the key opinion leaders, and the KOCs, key opinion customers, they're using generative AI, and CGI. You've got virtual influencers. So I used to have, an account, or it was Douyin, it was TikTok. I had an account in 2015, a TikTok account, and I was selling like
live shopping.
It was a shopping platform, yes. But now I know my friends are using like virtual influencers and generative AI to create products. But even with generative AI, you saw it there with Google, they're creating fake AI products to help people choose real products. Hilarious. But yeah, so same thing in China. And also like in China, I remember like JD, they had AR in the browser in 2018.
Wow.
And that came as standard. And I remember playing Honor of Kings, like in 2018, we get the lipstick. So gamified assets, trading collectibles. That's all very Chinese as well, that kind of behavior. So yeah, fascinating place.
Yeah, Asia has been ahead of the game in so many levels. Even the companies that innovated in the US, like YouCam Makeup or Perfect Corp, who is the innovative AR company behind all the B2B AR we see, especially from makeup side. Mm-hmm. It was initiated, I believe, in Taiwan.
Perfect Corp, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very interesting that they brought in the technology, and then also live shopping that you mentioned. Same thing. The founders of these companies that brought live shopping to the US brought the idea from China. And then WeChat is you were working for WeChat before. It's one of the most unique apps you can get because people can literally have one app that does a lot of things.
Absolutely. And I had the pleasure of working for them for 1 year. We were developing overseas WeChat Pay. So I fell into that job because I was a fashion buyer. So I was flying to Paris, and then my clients would say, oh, we want to pay in Zhufubao or Weixin. So I would say to the fashion brand, are you accepting WeChat? But the WeChat you can only get, when I was a buyer, you could only put up to 50,000 euro on your WeChat. But there was loads wrong when I went shopping in Europe, back in 2015. Like I remember going to Fendi in Italy, and the lady didn't speak English, but she spoke Mandarin. So we were communicating in Mandarin, and I was complaining because my client didn't have electricity for her iPhone, so she could do a comparison analysis with the online version. So they lost the sale. So I just said to the store designer, for Chinese. So I spent the next week wearing battery packs like Lara Croft, on my hips. So the client was able to do a comparison analysis, figure out if the item was real or not, all this stuff. So it was quite an interesting time. So the brands that I met have learned a lot from me along the way about how Chinese like to shop, what their store environment needs to look like, what their aftercare services for Chinese. And so they want APP technology was kind of what they're born with, pretty much.
What is APP?
Application, that's what we call it in China. APP. Yeah. Now we're in the 3D APP world and post smartphones. Very excited. Okay. But I have no idea. I haven't really been back there since. But I know they're using virtual influencers for sure on their Douyin accounts or whatever.
How about virtual stores? Have you come across one that they're doing?
China?
Yeah.
Or I haven't come across, no, I haven't been there since 2019, so no, I'm not so sure. I mean, I'm enjoying, the Obsess stores at them. Obsess are creating a lot of nice, beautiful virtual stores.
Yeah. And most of them are like first person, so you don't get to really see others.
Yeah, they're AR, really. AR experiences via desktop, but it's still a nicer 3D e-commerce vibe than an
Compared to
ugly.
Amazon and the traditional commerce.
I hate 2D catalog shopping. Boring. I barely use the Zara app.
Well, ideally, you want to have both, immersive experience of like going to physical stores and then having the convenience of that. So we're working on that.
We call it the seamless integration of online e-commerce in an in-store environment. So it's the merging of both. So if you can have both, I think physical retail spaces are for gamification and edutainment and workshops and all that. So it's nice to have both, but we should have the same hyper-personalized, customized experience, whether in an app or a 3D app or a store or a metaverse platform or a gaming platform. I'm very comfortable though with brands knowing everything about me if I can get the hyper-personalized rendered experience.
Yeah, I feel the same. And do you see one day like the job that you had as a personal buyer to be fulfilled by an AI?
Yes, I hope so. My fashion buyer days are well over. I think I'm a big fan of automation. I'm a big fan of data-driven decision making. Big fan of transparency. And actually, even for my own research and even my own work, I use generative AI. I use AI apps for academic research, creative writing, productivity tools, even 3D generation models of clothing and so on. My life has totally changed since we've had generative AI, but it's basically though how we use it, when we use it. So it's still early days, but AI has massively changed my life. And my students would say that the internet actually changed my life, but my students, their big time is AI. That's what they're going to be known for, pretty much that age. I find AI, I'm a different person, to be honest. Five, and the agents as well. I would suggest to anybody, when you go to ChatGPT, try out the agents. They're really, really convenient, but don't use them for research papers. Very bad. Otherwise, you get 0. They're only for creative and innovation assignments.
That's awesome, and I wouldn't suggest using it for anything that has to do with IP, because even if you have a business account, they're gonna train it on your data and pass it on to your competitors. So you don't want that.
Exactly.
So looking at our comments, I see that Philip is talking about combining blockchain with AI. I think that is definitely something along the lines that we talked about. Each of these technologies are bringing something to the table, and the beauty or the magic will happen when we actually combine them all. So when we do get ideas from other people's work, then we give them the credit back. So stuff like that are very valuable. And Robert mentioned group buying or leveraging of buying power is the future, so untapped. So brilliant idea, Paula. And that's pretty much all the topics that I wanted to cover. What else you would like to share with us, Paula? What are your plans? What is your vision? Where are you heading personally, and then also with your education and other work that you're doing?
Yeah, so I suppose really continuing to work in my university and create a cross-discipline program. So the program will basically be a mixture of all three, and the programs will be for non-design retail students who want to participate in the design function or the gamified function or get involved in immersive retail, crypto, Web3, emerging tech. So I really feel, the future of fashion professionals, you have to have multiple hats. You have to understand sustainability. You need to understand AI and all the different type of technologies. And then I suppose really a digital twin, we're raising at the moment. So we've already had like 5 drops. So now we're looking to increase our AI capacity in that. So working together with digital twin is going to be important. And then for myself, just trying to I'm considering doing a PhD in the topic actually, and it's a big topic. And I suppose really I just want to try and solve or provide another alternative to fast fashion. I think if I RIP someday and someone says, oh, what do we remember Paula for? Oh, that was the lady who taught us about how to be more sustainable and made it viable and was able to prove that if you have this fusion of these technologies, we may have some chance of creating more sustainable products and services that benefit everybody from a political, economic, social, technical, legal, environmental perspective.
Yes, that's beautiful. Amazing. Wow, that's very inspiring. And I always believe like the real impact happens when you're educating people. So you are really at the cutting edge of it and educating the next generation, educating us now. And this is really powerful. Do you have any predictions in terms of like where these industries are going over the next year or so? How do you see this all evolve?
Well, I think there's quite a big shakeup at the moment with generative AI. So we're going to probably have policy and actually sustainability as well. I mean, I know for the university we have to have sustainability implemented across all programs, reduce our carbon footprint. So sustainability is going to be a big one, and also how we're going to monitor and regulate generative AI. And then I was just saying about crypto. It's an interesting time for crypto now as well. So there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment, I feel. Like we were saying early, Nico, like we could wake up tomorrow and 700 engineers have left OpenAI. What am I going to do for class material? I know, but you know what I mean. It's going to cause a seismic shift. So, and even my students were saying as well, they were getting bored because I kept talking about suppose smartphone. I was stressing them out, and they were like, "That won't be for another." I said it'll be 5 years time. They're like, "No way, it'll be 10 years." And I was like, well, I was standing right here 20 years ago, and you all told me that money in an email was silly, and that, why would you buy a handbag on the internet when you just buy it from the local shop? So here I am 20 years later trying to sell, another type of technology, and I'm having the same, well, we don't like VR and AR. And I'm like, for now you don't, but maybe in the future you will. So fun conversations.
Well, yes, and it does take effort from all of us, all the developers, builders, to really get this technology up to the part that then your students wouldn't object it. Like this becomes something that everybody can see themselves using it. Right now, even though Apple Vision Pro seems to be the solution, it's very expensive, bulky, and everything. Would you walk with that in the street? Probably not. It's going to be still odd. And so I think the 5 years is pretty reasonable. I agree with that. And I was just at the Metaverse Summit. They were talking about several iterations because there's like an 18 months of product development per hardware. So with these cycles, hopefully we will see better products within 5 years. And hopefully we will have better immersive stores that there's, because if you don't have content, doesn't matter if there are all these devices.
Yes.
What do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I like the idea of co-creation as well. I think brands need to sort out their data sets and how they're going to interact with the consumer long term, and that's all going to be regulated and standardized eventually. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, and what do you think happened to Metaverse? Like, do you see that coming back, or do you see it be more like standalone, like virtual stores and immersive experiences? What are your thoughts on that front?
I kind of see Metaverse really as an internet of places. I don't, 3D places. I don't see it really as a platform as such. I used to say it was a platform, that's handy, but I think it's more of a mindset, really. The Metaverse is a virtual world where you hang out and you own your own identity and you buy, sell and trade assets, and they run their own creative economy through these digital worlds. So Metaverse is evolving. It's a 3D virtual environment. I mean, I don't really think about it that much. It's kind of become just part of a 3D world or a place where you interact with people. I don't know if it's going down or not. You're talking about the platforms, the future of the platforms, is it?
Yeah, I mean, all these platforms that were created, like Decentraland, Sandbox, and all of them are pretty empty right now.
Yeah, I think they're going to be channel distribution. You know, so just like, you know, omni-channel. So you may have a store in one metaverse land or platform and one another, and then you'll have your own kind of 3D e-commerce. So I think it's a new distribution platform for brands to connect with their consumers, but I don't know if they're going to use it. They won't, will it, you know, like you could visit a mall in the metaverse and it has a variety of brands. It's just a different shopping experience. I think they're going to have to really start differentiating themselves. It's just a distribution channel. It's an e-commerce distribution channel in a virtual or gamified way, or they may develop their own e-commerce shops, but it's a distribution channel. That's the way I see it, or an internet of things or places. So it's constantly evolving. I don't think metaverse is dying as such. I think it just probably has to redefine itself. If that makes sense. You need to have
maybe incorporate. Right, yeah. Incorporating the community element, give people more reason to want to be there. There's like even physical malls are not as exciting. I don't know about Europe, but in the US, a lot of them are closing because there's not enough reasons for people to go there. They can just do everything online.
Absolutely. And so, I don't like IRL shopping. I find it incredibly understimulating, boring, and irritating. Yeah, I mean, I would do it on the holidays, you know, if I'm really chilled and I have nothing to do, but no, I do not enjoy retail. That's why my hashtag is buy boring retail. I think the future of retail might be service orientated, less products, places where you can go and meet friends. They have multi-purpose and dual functionality. I think the space is going to change how we shop really, but no, I'm very comfortable, you know, going to McDonald's metaverse and ordering or co-creating my burger. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't like.
And then receive the order by the door. Yeah, I mean, merging it with physical is also missing, right? A lot of the experiences are just like silo metaverse. There's nothing tangible.
Yeah, there needs to be something, some sort of integration, or it needs to. Yeah, they need to redefine their channel. It's a channel of distribution. They need to redefine it. I think is the best thing.
Omnichannel. Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Paula. It was amazing to hear your insights. Is there any, thank you. How can people find you if there's any specific call to action you have? Let me know.
Yeah, well, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Also, we have the deck for Digital Twins who are raising, and then get in contact. Like if you're interested in developing new modules, I have a lot of students from other universities who would reach out if they want like surveys or my thoughts on, you know, what's happening in the future of fashion retail. So yeah, my DMs are open, happy to have the chats and work on research or work on consultancy or whatever's going on in the industry. I love to stay up to date and make new friends. And I definitely think Web3 is a vibe as well. I like the community that comes with change. It's fun and interactive.
Awesome. And heading to Web 4.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. You're so knowledgeable and amazing human. Thank you so much for your time and being with us. Thank you to our audience for your comments and support. We will be back next week at 2 p.m. EST again with Emerging Tech and Immersive Experiences news. Have a beautiful rest of your day and happy holidays. Thank you.
Hi guys, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.